When 2 million maintenance-free outboard engines hit the water during the pandemic boom, dealers and boaters believed they were buying the future. But as refund demands exploded and 11 models crashed to just $2,000, warehouses and docks filled with dumped tech that failed at sea. How did innovation turn into one of the marine world's biggest mysteries? And are today's bargains a hidden opportunity or a trap waiting to repeat itself? A new kind of buyer flooded the docks in 2020. Families who had never owned a boat before found themselves searching for outboards online, drawn in by promises of freedom and safety on the water. Social feeds filled with glossy clips, young couples launching into glassy lakes, retirees grinning beside their brand new engines, all tagged with slogans like "Maintenance free for life" and "Ready for tomorrow." The numbers behind the optimism were staggering. U.S. powerboat sales shot past 300,000 in a single year, breaking records not seen since before the financial crisis. Global shipments of outboards soared to more than 684,000 units in 2021, with North America leading the surge. Dealers in Florida, Michigan, and California reported wait lists stretching for months. For a brief moment, it seemed every driveway had a boat trailer hitched up, every marina a waiting list. Manufacturers like Yamaha, Mercury, Suzuki, and Evinrude raced to keep up. Production lines ran at full tilt, and dealers scrambled to secure inventory, fearing they would miss out on the next shipment. Reports from the National Marine Manufacturers Association described the COVID-19 era as an unprecedented boom, with demand outpacing even the wildest forecasts. Stimulus checks and a hunger for outdoor escape turned outboards into the must-have purchase of the season. This wave wasn't just about numbers, it was a lifestyle shift. First-time owners joined online groups to swap tips, show off new gear, and share the thrill of getting out on the water. For many, the engine wasn't just a machine. It was a ticket to normalcy in a year when everything else felt uncertain. The installed base swelled almost overnight, laying the groundwork for what would become the largest outboard engine population in modern history. But with so many engines hitting the water in so little time, the industry's service networks began to feel the strain. Dealers found themselves fielding calls from new owners with questions, and soon with complaints. The optimism of the demand wave set the stage for a very different reality, one that would test the limits of both technology and trust. Dealers across the country faced a choice in 2020 that would define their fortunes for years to come. With wait lists stretching out and customers clamoring for any available engine, the pressure to stock up became impossible to ignore. Manufacturer representatives visited showrooms with promises. Early orders meant priority allocation, and the biggest buyers would never have to turn away a sale. Behind the scenes, confidential memos detailed a new game: tiered rebates, volume bonuses, and cash incentives for every extra crate taken off the factory floor. Some dealers in Florida and the Great Lakes region doubled or even tripled their usual orders, banking on the idea that the demand wave would never break. Floor plan lenders sweetened the deal with zero-interest windows and payment deferrals, letting dealers fill warehouses without feeling the cost, at least not right away. Contracts included curtailment triggers, but those seemed distant in the face of record sales. By late 2021, South Florida dealers carried inventories topping 400 units, with millions of dollars financed and days to sell metrics creeping higher as each shipment arrived. The numbers looked good on paper, especially with manufacturer rebates stacking up to $500 per engine for pre-pandemic forecasts blown out of the water. The fear of missing out drove decisions as much as any spreadsheet. Dealers remembered the allocation shortages of the past, when those who hesitated were left with empty showrooms and frustrated customers. Now the risk was reversed. Holding too little inventory meant losing ground to rivals, missing out on bonuses, or being left out of the next allocation round. Independent shops and OEM-aligned dealers alike raced to secure every possible unit, convinced that the pandemic-fueled boom would keep rolling. As the months passed and the surge began to slow, the reality of these inventory bets set in. Days to sell doubled, then tripled. Markdowns deepened from $5,000 to $2,000 per engine as aging stock triggered chargebacks and rising interest payments. Warehouse auctions filled with new, unsold outboards, many still in their original crates. In the end, the same incentives that fueled the boom left dealers exposed, sitting on mountains of inventory as demand faded and the true cost of over-ordering came due. Direct fuel injection was supposed to be the breakthrough that brought outboards into a new era. Engineers redesigned combustion chambers, shrunk tolerances, and leaned on digital controls to meet emissions targets and squeeze more power from every drop of fuel. On paper, the numbers were impressive: cleaner exhaust, higher output, and smoother idle, all while promising owners they would never need to think about spark plugs or carburetor jets again. But the laboratory conditions that made these claims possible rarely matched the realities of salt water, sun, and unpredictable use. Heat mapping studies revealed a critical gap. In the rush to cut weight and reduce friction, many models left less margin for error. Components that once tolerated years of abuse now depended on precise fuel atomization and perfect electronic timing. Even a minor deviation, a clogged injector, a stuck sensor, a voltage drop in the ECU could push temperatures up, triggering limp mode or outright failure. Field data from teardown labs confirmed what owners began to suspect. Real-world wear rates often outpaced factory projections, especially in coastal environments where salt, vibration, and humidity worked together to accelerate breakdowns. Injector clogging became a recurring theme. Evinrude's E-Tech G2 and Mercury's Verado series both suffered from piezo injector failures, with lab analysis tracing root causes to manufacturing inclusions and field contamination that slipped past fine mesh filters. Even the smallest particles could jam a plunger or disrupt spray patterns, leading to rough running or no-start scenarios. Meanwhile, Suzuki's DF350A required 3 separate software updates in 2 years to address oiling and control logic bugs, each one locking out owners from performing even basic resets without a dealer's proprietary tool. The promise of maintenance-free reliability hinged on a network of sensors and electronic controls. But when these systems glitched, or when software locked out diagnostics, owners found themselves stranded, unable to clear codes or restart engines without expensive dealer intervention. The engineering gamble had a cost. As tolerances tightened and control modules multiplied, the line between innovation and vulnerability blurred. The next wave of trouble would not be mechanical alone, but logistical, as service networks struggled to keep up with the complexity they had helped create. Engines lined up in neat rows outside repair shops became a common sight by mid-2024. Owners waited sometimes for months, as promised turnarounds stretched into an open-ended limbo. Service managers fielded daily calls from frustrated customers, their calendars clogged with appointments that couldn't move forward. The bottleneck wasn't just a shortage of labor, it was the missing parts. Average lead times for critical components now exceeded a month, and in some regions even longer. Honda's recall notices warned owners not to expect parts until late fall, leaving entire fleets of boats idle through the summer. Mercury's service bulletins listed models affected by actuator and electronics failures, but added a single line: awaiting parts. At Yamaha dealerships, stacks of unopened work orders sat behind the counter, each tagged with a date and a question mark for completion. Mechanics remember the backlog building week after week. One Florida tech described, "We had 5 engines on stands, all needed the same injector. Parts were on back order for over a month. Customers called every day, we had nothing to tell them. For every engine waiting on a proprietary module or a redesigned actuator, there were dozens more with minor faults that still couldn't be fixed. The downtime spiral hit hardest in coastal regions, where saltwater units failed at 2 to 6 times the rate of freshwater models. Owners who relied on their boats for work or recreation found themselves stranded, watching the season slip away. Insurance claims for lost use began to climb, while marinas filled with boats going nowhere. The service gridlock had a ripple effect. Dealers, already sitting on unsold inventory, now faced angry customers demanding refunds or loan payment relief. Mechanics juggled warranty repairs and recall work, but the pace of arrivals far outstripped departures. Industry surveys placed the average repair cycle at 5 to 7 weeks, with no relief in sight as supply chains struggled to recover. Behind every statistic was a story of lost weekends, stalled businesses, and mountain bills. The promise of maintenance-free boating had turned into a waiting game with no clear end. For many, the real cost of innovation wasn't just measured in dollars. It was measured in time lost, trust broken, and engines gathering dust while the water waited. Curtailment clauses in dealer finance contracts left no room for error. Each outboard sitting unsold on a warehouse shelf triggered a countdown. After 90 days, lenders demanded a chunk of the principal back, often 10% or more, and the clock reset with every passing quarter. For dealers who had doubled or tripled orders in 2021, these curtailments stacked up fast. What started as a zero-interest grace period turned toxic as interest rates reset and inventory aged. By mid-2024, the average days to sell in South Florida had stretched from just over a month to more than 70 days. In the Great Lakes, the number jumped from 27 to 55. Each delay meant another curtailment payment, another rebate clawed back, another bonus evaporated. Floor plan lenders, seeing their exposure rise, tightened terms and sent out reminders, pay down or face default. For many dealers, the math no longer worked. Warehouse floors filled with engines that had cost $15,000 or more, now marked down to $2,000 just to clear the books. Some units moved out at auction for even less, sometimes at a loss that wiped out years of accumulated rebates. The pressure was relentless. One Gulf Coast dealer described the spiral. You'd think you're ahead, then you get the curtailment notice. Suddenly, you're borrowing to pay off inventory you can't move. These contract mechanics forced liquidation on a massive scale. Dealers who once fought for allocation now scrambled to dump engines before the next curtailment hit. The financial clock didn't care about service backlogs or recall delays. It only cared how long the stock sat. As the days to sell doubled, then tripled, the decision to dump wasn't a choice, it was survival. In the summer of 2024, the outboard market turned upside down. At regional auctions and warehouse clearances, rows of brand new engines, once the pride of dealer showrooms, were now tagged at $2,000 or less. Listings flooded classified sites with phrases like "price to move" and "as is, no warranty." For buyers willing to take the risk, it was a fire sale unlike anything seen before. The roster of dumped models reads like a who's who of modern marine engineering. Evinrude's E-Tech G2, 150 to 300 horsepower, led the pack. Engines that once sold for $22,000 now stacked in crates at a tenth of their original price. Mercury's Verado V6 and V8, plagued by corrosion recalls, joined the markdown, alongside the Suzuki DF350A dual prop, infamous for its rapid-fire service bulletins. Yamaha's V-Max SHO and the Mercury 4-stroke, both 2018 and newer, appeared in bulk, their digital controls no longer an asset but a liability when parts ran short. Further down the list, Suzuki's DF300B, Evinrude's E-Tech 90 to 135 horsepower, Yamaha F200, Mercury Optimax Pro XS, Suzuki DF250SS, and late-model Mercury Mariners all surfaced at liquidation events. Auction manifests and dealer spreadsheets documented the collapse. 11 models, thousands of units, all circling the $2,000 mark. Some engines moved overseas, others to salvage yards. But the heart of the story lay in the domestic flood. Engines once out of reach for most, now sold off at a loss just to clear the books. For a new generation of buyers, the temptation was real. The same technology that had promised freedom now sat boxed and discounted, a bargain for those willing to gamble on what lay beneath the cowling. The markdown wasn't just a number, it was a reckoning, and it set the stage for battles still to come. Courtrooms became the new battleground for the outboard industry in 2025. The Smith et al. Versus Mercury case, filed in Wisconsin, thrust the issue into the national spotlight. Plaintiffs, owners from 4 states, presented internal emails showing Mercury's early awareness of corrosion risks in their V6 and V8 Verado models. Depositions revealed a pattern. Warranty claims denied on technicalities, service bulletins quietly issued, and customer complaints mounting with each passing month. The case settled on confidential terms, but the damage was done. News of the lawsuit rippled across forums and trade journals, stoking fears among owners and putting manufacturers on alert. While legal teams sparred over responsibility, lenders tallied the growing cost of defaults. By summer, more than 11,000 outboard loans had fallen delinquent, a spike tracked in finance reports from South Florida to the Great Lakes. Many dealers, already underwater on inventory, watched as buyers simply walked away from their payment plans. Lenders, facing a wave of repossessions, began dumping engines at auction, often for less than the outstanding balance. The knock-on effect reached manufacturers, who now faced chargebacks and mounting legal exposure. Industry analysts called it a decisive break. The convergence of legal action and financial collapse forced a reckoning across the sector. For years, the promise of maintenance-free boating had masked a fragile reality. Now, with lawsuits settled in silence and loan defaults climbing past 11,000, the crisis reached its peak, leaving dealers, lenders, and owners searching for answers in the wreckage. By mid-2025, over 2 million outboard engines had been recalled or liquidated, with 11 models selling for as little as $2,000, numbers confirmed in court filings and auction manifests. The investigation traced how pandemic-era demand and promises of maintenance-free technology led to risky engineering shortcuts, months-long repair delays, and a surge in refund demands. Key cases like Smith et al. Versus Mercury revealed the scale of consumer and dealer fallout, while finance reports showed more than 11,000 loan delinquencies tied to unsold stock. Yet some manufacturer testing methods and long-term reliability data remain undisclosed, leaving open questions about which engines will hold up in the years ahead. Today, the market is flooded with discounted outboards, but every buyer faces a clear choice: benefit from historic bargains or risk repeating the mistakes documented here. The outboard engine crisis stands as a cautionary record of how innovation, unchecked, can reshape an entire industry.